Hey guys, tonight we're heading to the edge of an ancient world, a coastline that smells like salt and resin, where purple sunsets burn across the waves, and fishermen pull their nets beneath cliffs of red stone. This is the land of the Phoenicians, people you've probably heard mentioned in passing, maybe in some documentary you half-watched before falling asleep. But tonight, you're going to drift right into their world. The sound of hammers on ship timbers, the hush of wind sliding through cedar trees, the soft lap of the Mediterranean. It's all here, and you, lucky dreamer, get to walk these shores as if you were one of them. You probably won't survive the ancient world, of course. No sunscreen, no antibiotics, and sandals made of optimism. But for now, you're safe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and local time. I always love seeing how many corners of the world we quietly share this hour with. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at twilight on the coast of Tyre, one of the old Phoenician cities, its walls rising out of the sea like coral made by human hands. The air is heavy with the day's warmth and the tang of salt. Around you, the rocky shore glows faintly as the last sunlight catches on shells and bits of driftwood. In the distance, ships bob at anchor, fat-bellied cargo vessels and slender fishing boats, their sails drawn up like folded wings. You hear the gulls crying over the harbor, and beneath that, the rhythm of waves brushing against stone. Someone passes by carrying a basket of murex shells, those little sea snails that, when crushed, yield the deep purple dye that would later make Phoenicia famous. The smell is pungent, like someone mixed seawater with old socks and left it in the sun. You wrinkle your nose, but here it means wealth. It's the color of kings and priests, and these people have built an entire coastal empire out of that slimy little fortune. The city itself isn't grand in the way of Egypt or Babylon. There are no towering pyramids, no endless ziggurats scraping the heavens. Tyre, Sidon, Byblos, they are practical, built for work, not worship. Their walls keep out raiders, their streets lead to docks. And their temples, well, they're sturdy, but modest. You pass one now, its columns etched with salt-streaked carvings of Baal and Astarte. Candles flicker inside, and you can almost hear the hum of evening prayers. Traders thanking the gods for calm seas and generous buyers. The Phoenicians don't think of themselves as an empire. There's no single king ruling it all, no unified flag fluttering above their ships. Instead, each city is its own little kingdom, its own proud island of autonomy. Tyre rules its waters, Sidon its workshops, Byblos its lumber trade. They compete, they cooperate, they sometimes quietly sabotage each other, like siblings running rival lemonade stands. Historians still argue whether this lack of central power made them stronger or weaker. On one hand, they were nimble and adaptable. On the other, well, try organizing a navy when every admiral insists on being captain. But that's part of the charm. You can feel it here. The Phoenicians aren't conquerors with armies, they're connectors with sails. Their strength lies not in spears, but in ropes and oars and trade agreements sealed with handshakes and a bit of wine. You walk through the marketplace and the air is thick with sound. Merchants bargaining in half a dozen languages, children darting between stalls, someone playing a reed flute that's slightly out of tune but still somehow perfect for the moment. You pause at a pottery stand. Rows of amphorae gleam in the firelight, each painted with looping patterns. Waves, fish, ships. The vendor proudly tells you they're designed for long sea voyages, their narrow necks keeping wine from sloshing out in rough waters. He winks and adds, unless the sailors drink it first. You both laugh, though you're not entirely sure he's joking. Farther along, you reach the shipyards. The day's labor has mostly ended, but a few men still work under torches, fitting planks onto a hull that rises from the sand like a sleeping whale. The smell of cedar is sharp and clean. It's the sacred tree of these lands. Tall, straight, rot-resistant. Perfect for ships, palaces, and temples. Egypt, Babylon, and even Israel craved Phoenician timber. In exchange, gold flows back across the sea. You can almost hear the hammers echoing into history. The foreman calls out something in a rough coastal dialect. A few younger workers laugh, tossing scraps of wood into the fire. Someone hums a tune, steady, slow, rhythmic. It sounds like the sea itself exhaling. You stand there, entranced, feeling that sleepy weight behind your eyes as the sound of waves, wood, and human breath blend into a lullaby older than language. A gentle breeze lifts the smell of tar and resin. Stars begin to pierce the purple dusk. The sailors will soon head to the taverns clustered near the docks, places where stories travel faster than ships. Tales of Cyprus's copper mines, Egyptian grain, and strange northern lands where amber washes ashore. There's always a bit of exaggeration, of course. One man swears he saw an island where people eat fish raw. Another claims there are sea monsters that swallow entire galleys. You sip watered wine and nod politely. Every sailor needs a good story. Every listener needs one to fall asleep to. There's something deeply human in this scene, something you recognize. The way people lean into each other over the den, the way laughter fills the air even after long, grueling days. You might be thousands of years in the past, but the rhythm feels familiar. The Phoenicians may be ancient, but they lived by the same simple truth. Connection keeps the world turning. A cat brushes against your leg, its fur gritty with sand. It meows in that universal tone that means feed me, though you suspect it's eaten more fish than you today. Somewhere nearby, a ship's bell rings, a single resonant note that carries over the quiet water. It's the sound of departure. You turn toward the pier and see a vessel readying to leave. The crew moves like shadows, coiling ropes, lowering sails. The oars dip and the ship slides forward, lanterns flickering along its deck. You feel a pang of longing, though you're not sure for what. Adventure? Discovery? Or simply the peace of floating away from everything familiar? As you watch the ship vanish into the dark horizon, you realize something simple but profound. This is how the Phoenicians built their world, not through conquest, but through curiosity. Through quiet persistence, one voyage at a time. No grand proclamations, no epic battles, just cedar hulls creaking beneath stars, sailors trusting the sea more than kings. A child runs by, chasing a dog with a stick. Somewhere, a woman calls out for him to come home. The night deepens, and lamps flicker to life across the city walls. You breathe in, slow and steady, letting the smell of the sea fill your lungs. The sound of waves grows softer, rhythmic, like a heartbeat you can almost sync your breathing to. The Phoenician world begins here, on this humble coast, at the meeting of land and endless water. You're standing where history quietly set sail, where a people with no empire somehow managed to connect half the known world. You feel the wind shift, cooler now, whispering of distant islands. You could stay here, watching the waves and the slow dance of light across the harbor. Or you could follow the ships and see where the cedar dreams carry you. Either way, you're already adrift in their story. Morning comes gently along the coast. The sea glimmers pale blue, and the scent of dew mixes with the sharper tang of resin. You wake, or maybe you just drift from one kind of dream into another, to the sound of axes striking wood in the hills above Tyre. The forest breathes out mist, and the air smells green, wet, and alive. You start climbing the rocky path inland, sandals scraping against uneven stone, toward the source of the sound, the great cedars of Lebanon. You've probably seen pictures of them, those tall, ancient trees with dark, sweeping branches that look like outstretched arms. But here, in this light, they're more than just trees. They're monuments of patience. Some are centuries old, their trunks so wide it would take 3 people holding hands to circle them. A gentle wind rustles their leaves, deep and steady, like the low voice of the earth itself. It's said that these cedars were sacred long before the Phoenicians built their ships. The old stories claim they were planted by the gods, meant to bridge the mortal and divine realms. A lumber crew works methodically, every motion practiced. Bronze axes flash, and the smell of fresh-cut wood spreads through the forest, sweet, almost honeyed. The woodcutters murmur short prayers before felling each tree, a ritual as much practical as spiritual. They believe the forest spirits must be appeased before you take their gifts. Historians still argue whether this reverence was purely religious or simply good PR to keep the lumber trade respectable. Either way, it worked. The Phoenicians were known for balancing profit with piety, even if the balance tilted slightly toward profit. You watch as a massive log crashes to the ground with a deep, satisfying thud. Dust rises in the sunlight. The workers pause, catch their breath, and then begin trimming branches. Nothing is wasted. The bark becomes rope fiber, the smaller limbs kindling for shipyard fires, the resin a sealant to waterproof hulls. You run your hand along the trunk's fresh surface. It's smooth and cool, still faintly damp from the tree's life. There's something humbling about it, knowing this wood will soon become part of a ship that crosses entire seas. Farther down the trail, you find the carpenter's camp. It smells of sawdust and smoke, and the sound of mallets beating pegs into timber echoes through the valley. The workers sit cross-legged, sharpening tools with patient rhythm. One man hums an old tune about the sea, something between a prayer and a lullaby. The Phoenicians didn't just chop wood, they engineered dreams. They shaped forests into floating cities, temples that moved, carrying their world outward to every horizon. Nearby, a scribe crouches over a wooden tablet, tallying logs and marking names. His writing is quick, efficient, a script that curves and curls almost like the grain of the wood itself. You don't realize it yet, but you're looking at the roots of something huge, the alphabet. The Phoenicians didn't invent writing, but they simplified it, stripped it down to sound and symbol so merchants and sailors could read and write without needing a priest's education. Imagine that, letters that anyone could learn, small enough to fit in a trader's pocket. The world's first real user-friendly interface. A foreman waves his arm, signaling the ox-drawn sleds to move. The logs creak and groan as they're dragged down the slope toward the city. It's slow, grueling work. You walk beside them, watching dust swirl around the animals' hooves. The road winds past small shrines and farms, through olive groves and fig orchards. Farmers glance up as you pass, their faces calm, weathered by sun and salt. Life here moves at the rhythm of necessity. Harvest, trade, repair, repeat. You reach the outskirts of Tyre again by midday. The harbor is awake now, bustling with noise and motion. Workers shout over the gulls, directing oxen carts and stacking cargo along the quays. The cedar logs are rolled into neat rows by the water, ready for their next transformation. A few children play between them, turning the giant trunks into imaginary ships. You smile. Some dreams start small. In one corner, masons mix lime and sand to build seawalls, patching places where last week's storm gnawed at the foundation. Tyre is a city that wrestles with the sea every day. Its stones are slick with salt, its air always heavy with humidity. You can feel the sea's patience. It takes a little each year, wearing away at everything that dares stand still. And yet, the Phoenicians keep rebuilding, like it's a conversation they refuse to end. You wander into a workshop near the docks. The door is open, and inside, the light falls across piles of planks, coils of rope, and jars of pitch. A craftsman greets you with a nod, his hands stained dark from years of labor. He's shaping a small model of a ship, something used to test designs before full-scale construction. It's beautiful. Curved prow, balanced hull, delicate rigging. You compliment him, and he grins, shrugging off the praise. The wood does most of the work, he says. He tells you that the cedar isn't just strong, it resists rot, salt, and time. The Egyptians once called it the wood of eternity. They imported it for coffins and temples, and the Phoenicians made sure to charge handsomely for it. You glance around the workshop again and realize this place isn't just about ships, it's about trade, identity, and survival. Without the forest, there's no fleet. Without the fleet, there's no Phoenicia. He offers you a seat and pours a little wine into a clay cup. It's rough, tart, but refreshing. The conversation drifts to myths, the way people always turn craftsmanship into legend. He mentions a story about King Hiram of Tyre, who supposedly sent cedar wood and builders to help construct Solomon's temple in Jerusalem. The king said our wood reached heaven, the craftsman says, chuckling softly, but he didn't mention we had to carry it uphill first. You laugh, and it echoes off the wooden beams. There's a warmth to it, the kind that softens even the ache of labor. A boy runs in with a message, and the craftsman excuses himself. You wander back outside, past stacks of timber, back toward the harbor's edge. The sea is glittering now, a sheet of shifting silver. You can almost see your reflection waving in it, distorted by gentle ripples. A sailor walks by humming, his tunic open to the breeze, smelling faintly of salt and cedar oil. He carries a carved amulet, Baal Melkart, the city's protector. The figure looks both fierce and amused, like a god who knows you'll pray mostly when you're in trouble. You nod to the sailor. He nods back, as if to say, we all rely on the same waves. You linger a while longer, watching the sun dip lower. In the shipyards, workers are already planing the first cedar planks for new hulls. The sound of it, shh, 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 is hypnotic, like the sea brushing the shore. You notice how everything connects. The forest to the harbor, the carpenter to the sailor, the city to the sea. It's all one great system of breath and rhythm, of taking and giving back. A fringe tidbit floats to mind, one that sailors swear by even now. Some say Phoenician carpenters would bless their ships by whispering the name of a tree spirit into the keel before launch. Supposedly, if the sea tried to swallow the ship, the spirit would argue on its behalf. Maybe that's superstition. Or maybe it's a poetic way of remembering that these ships were alive once, rooted, breathing, whispering in the wind. As twilight falls again, the forest above the city fades into shadow, and the masts below begin to glow in the torchlight. You take one last breath of that mingled scent, wood, smoke, and salt, and it fills your chest with something calm, something grounding. The Phoenicians built their cities like they built their ships, sturdy, adaptable, and meant to outlast storms. You can still hear the rhythm of axes somewhere inland, steady as a heartbeat. The same beat echoes in the shipyard hammers, the footsteps of merchants, the waves against the stone docks. It's as if the entire civilization breathes in time with the sea. You smile, feeling that soft drowsiness return. The day fades, and the sound of the forest mingles with the ocean again, as if they're trading stories in the dark. You've seen where the Phoenician world begins, not with kings or wars, but with cedar trees and quiet determination. And tomorrow, those same logs will meet the water for the first time. The next morning begins with the sound of gulls. They're louder than you expect, almost like gossiping old neighbors complaining about everything and nothing. You walk toward the harbor again, sunlight already bright on the sea. It glints off the water like scattered coins, and the whole shoreline hums with work. The scent of wet rope, tar, and fish mixes into that oddly comforting perfume of a living port. You stretch your back, rub a bit of sleep from your eyes, and take in the view of a city quietly reinventing the coastline. The Phoenicians aren't just people who live by the sea. They engineer it. Every inch of their harbors is a small victory against nature's chaos. You can see it happening before your eyes. Men hauling massive stones to extend the seawalls, others building wooden piers supported by limestone blocks. The work is noisy, rhythmic, and precise. One man yells something about tides, another splashes knee-deep into the water, gesturing wildly like a conductor directing an orchestra of hammers and grunts. You can't help but admire their coordination. As you walk closer, the scale of it becomes clear. These aren't just fishing coves anymore. They're becoming organized ports with quays, ramps, and carved channels to guide ships safely in. Small wooden cranes lift cargo with ropes, powered by muscle and leverage. The workers move fast, used to the rhythm of the tides. Miss your timing, and the sea reclaims what you built. There's something almost meditative about watching it. The stones clack, the ropes creak, and you find yourself swaying slightly with the rhythm. A mason wipes sweat from his brow and grins at you. "The sea doesn't wait," he says simply, returning to his work. You nod. The sea never waits, but somehow these people keep up. Further along the dock, you pass a group of merchants discussing shipments. Their tunics are cleaner than the workers, their hands soft, but their eyes sharp. One holds a clay tablet etched with neat Phoenician letters, an early shipping manifest. You peek over his shoulder and see neat rows of entries: cedar planks, murex dye, olive oil, wine. "We'll store the dye inland this time," one man mutters. "Last time the smell chased a fish away." They laugh, and you realize that for them, the harbor isn't just a workplace, it's a living organism, equal parts chaos and routine. Nearby, a woman sits mending a fishing net, her fingers moving deftly through the coarse rope. She's humming softly, some tune about sailors and homecomings. You crouch down to watch her hands work, the knots forming in neat symmetry. "You travel far?" she asks without looking up. You tell her you're just passing through. "Good," she says. "The sea always brings people through, keeps the city from getting too quiet." There's wisdom in that, the kind you can't find in books, though, to be fair, most books haven't been invented yet. Historians still argue whether the Phoenicians designed their ports primarily for trade or defense. Some say the double harbor design, one side for merchants, one for warships, was a strategic masterpiece. Others think it just made unloading cargo less of a nightmare. Either way, it worked. These harbors became the arteries of an entire civilization, pumping life and wealth through 1,000 miles of coastline. You find yourself wandering to the quieter edge of the docks, where a small cove curves inward like a secret pocket. Here, shipwrights are testing new mooring systems, thicker ropes, deeper anchors, stronger pilings. The water laps against the beams with a slow, sleepy rhythm. You watch a young sailor practice tossing an anchor, his brow furrowed in concentration. The first attempt misses completely and splashes a nearby fisherman who curses in 3 languages before laughing it off. "Next time, aim for the sea," the fisherman says, wringing out his tunic. You smile. Even in antiquity, workplace banter thrives. In a shaded corner, a cluster of carpenters sit eating their midday meal: flatbread, olives, dried figs. One waves you over. You join them, grateful for a seat. The bread is dry, but the olives are sharp and briny, exactly the kind of snack that makes sense near the ocean. Conversation drifts from trade to gossip to ship design. One of the older men tells you, between bites, that when he was a boy, Tyre's harbor was nothing more than a rocky inlet. "We built her piece by piece," he says, tapping his chest with pride. "Now ships from Egypt and Cyprus come to our waters." He glances toward the horizon, where 2 dark shapes are slowly approaching, merchant vessels, sails full of wind. The harbor starts to stir. Dockhands shout instructions, runners sprint toward the quay, and the faint clang of bells echoes across the water. You can feel the pulse of anticipation rise. The ships glide closer, their prows carved with stylized horse heads, eyes painted on either side to see the way home. You remember hearing a sailor say that those eyes protected them from getting lost at sea. Superstition maybe, but it's oddly comforting to think the ships themselves are alive and watchful. When the first vessel docks, the smell hits you. A mix of spices, resin, and faint mildew from weeks at sea. Crewmen toss ropes, secure lines, and immediately begin unloading. Amphoria of olive oil, baskets of dried fish, ingots of copper, and rolls of cloth spill from the decks. The dock erupts in controlled chaos. Merchants shout prices, scribes record weights, and porters carry loads so heavy they look like walking barrels. Somewhere in the mess, someone drops a jar of wine. It shatters, splashing across the stones, and everyone groans. "The gods are thirsty," a sailor says, and just like that, the tension breaks into laughter. Watching it all, you realize this harbor isn't just infrastructure, it's a social network before social networks existed. Every ship is a message, every crate a connection. Trade routes become threads weaving a web that links people from distant lands. You overhear snippets of foreign tongues, Greek, Egyptian, Aramaic, and realize that Phoenicia speaks them all fluently through trade. This is their superpower, communication without conquest. As the day stretches on, you find yourself drawn to the quieter corners again. Near the end of the pier, an older sailor sits carving something small and delicate. You approach and see it's a miniature ship, complete with tiny rigging. "For my grandson," he says, smiling without looking up. "He'll sail one day." You ask if he's afraid of the sea's dangers. The sailor chuckles softly. "Always. But fear keeps you awake when the wind changes." You file that away, thinking it might apply to more than sailing. The sun lowers and the water turns from blue to gold. You sit on a wooden beam, letting your feet dangle above the waves. The harbor is calmer now, the day's frenzy giving way to evening's exhale. Someone nearby is roasting fish on a small brazier. The smell drifts over, making your stomach rumble. A few children chase each other along the docks, their laughter skipping like pebbles across the water. The city lights begin to flicker on, oil lamps glowing amber behind shutters. As the last ship of the day glides into its berth, you notice something beautiful. The reflection of the harbor walls in the water looks almost like a perfect mirror city below the waves. You imagine that somewhere down there, in the shimmering depths, there's another Tyre, a silent, upside-down version where fish swim through the arches and merfolk gossip about the price of purple dye. It's a whimsical thought, but the kind that fits the hour. You lean back on your hands, feeling the rough grain of the pier beneath your palms. Around you, the world slows, the air cools, the sounds soften to whispers, the splash of an oar, the creak of rope, the occasional gull settling down for the night. You can almost hear the heartbeat of the harbor, steady and sure. And you realize this is where civilization learns to breathe with the sea. Not just fight it, not just fear it, but collaborate with it. The Phoenicians didn't dominate nature, they negotiated. They learned the tides, mapped the currents, coaxed the coastline into partnership. They built harbors that were both practical and poetic, half engineering, half prayer. You close your eyes and imagine it in darkness. Lanterns bobbing on decks, waves brushing the stones, sailors humming softly before sleep. The sound blends into something you can feel in your chest, a kind of calm vibration that feels almost like the sea breathing you in return. Somewhere, a bell rings. Another day's tide is done. By dawn, the harbor is wrapped in a mist so fine it feels like breathing through silk. The air is cool, the sea impossibly calm, a glassy mirror stretching toward the horizon. You walk along the waterfront, listening to the soft groan of wood against wood, ropes tightening, and the sleepy calls of shipwrights already at work. Today, you're not just watching the harbor, you're stepping into the beating heart of Phoenician genius, the shipyards. They smell exactly like you'd expect: cedar, tar, and ambition. The ground is slick with sawdust, and you can hear hammers ringing in steady rhythm.
Men and boys move among the half-built hulls, climbing over scaffolds, hauling planks, and shouting instructions that echo across the water. You pause to take it all in. Curved ribs of timber rising like skeletons of sleeping beasts, some still raw, others polished smooth and golden in the morning light. The Phoenicians didn't invent ships, but they perfected them. You can see it here. Every curve, every joint, every rope chosen with precision. These are craftsmen who understand the sea not as an obstacle, but as an extension of themselves. Their ships don't fight the water, they flow with it. You wander closer to one of the hulls. It's massive, bigger than a house, though elegant in form. The master shipwright, a wiry man with hands like driftwood, notices you watching and nods. He gestures toward the structure proudly. 30 oars aside, he says, voice thick with sawdust. She'll dance on the water. You run your hand along the cedar planks, warm from friction where they've been smoothed with sandstone. The joinery is seamless, each plank locked into the next by wooden dowels and linen caulking soaked in pitch. It's ancient technology, but shockingly effective. The Phoenicians built ships so tight that even the waves had to ask politely to come aboard. The shipwright shows you how they use mortise and tenon joints, tiny tongue and groove fittings that interlock planks without nails. Metal rusts, he says simply, but wood remembers. You can't tell if that's a proverb or just workshop wisdom, but it sticks with you. Nearby, apprentices carry buckets of pitch to seal the hulls. The tar bubbles and smokes in clay pots, filling the air with that thick, sharp smell that clings to your hair and clothes. They brush it into every seam with care, murmuring small prayers for good fortune and smooth sailing. One of them smirks and adds, "And no sea monsters this time." Everyone laughs. Apparently, last year's ship ran into something big. Whether it was a whale or an overactive imagination, no one can agree. A fringe tidbit you overhear makes you grin. Some Phoenician shipbuilders used crushed eggshells and goat hair in their caulking mixture for extra strength. It sounds like ancient DIY, probably smelled terrible, but apparently worked. Historians still argue whether that recipe was real or just the shipyard equivalent of a tall tale to keep outsiders guessing. You step aside as a group of laborers roll a completed hull toward the water. The creak of wood and the rhythmic chant of their work fills the air. The chant is old, maybe older than the city itself, half prayer, half work song. Heave the sea, take her slow, let her breathe before she goes. The hull slides into the shallows with a hiss, and the crowd cheers. There's something ritualistic about it, almost sacred. Every launch feels like a birth. The master shipwright watches proudly, wiping his hands on his tunic. Each ship has a soul, he says, almost to himself. You give her wood, she gives you back wind. You nod, though you're not entirely sure you understand. Still, it feels true. Later, you're invited aboard one of the Finnish ships. The deck is narrow but sturdy, the air thick with the scent of tar and salt. You run your hand along the steering oar, an elegant, oversized paddle mounted at the stern. No fancy wheel here, just muscle and instinct. The Phoenicians were masters of simplicity. Nothing wasted, nothing ornamental that didn't earn its place. You lean over the side, peering at the painted eyes on the prow. Large, serene, staring out at the horizon. Sailors say those eyes help the ship see its way home. You imagine the comfort of that belief, especially when the world is endless blue and your gods feel very far away. The ship's captain, a burly man with weathered skin, beckons you over. You see this line? He says, pointing to a groove carved along the deck. It marks where the ballast sits. Too high, and you'll tip. Too low, and you'll crawl. You nod, pretending you understand hydrodynamics at a spiritual level. He grins, clearly amused. Don't worry, he adds, the sea teaches quickly. You sit for a while as the crew prepares the rigging. The ropes creak, the mast rises, and the triangular sail unfurls like a giant bird stretching its wings. The sail catches the faint morning wind,
and for a moment the ship seems to breathe. The sound is soft, almost like a sigh. Watching this, you start to grasp how revolutionary these vessels are. They're not just cargo carriers, they're connectors. Each one ties together distant shores, turning the scattered Mediterranean into a single conversation. Their speed, agility, and durability give the Phoenicians an edge no army could match. The captain leans against the mast, looking out to sea. "You ever notice," he says, "how no one remembers the men who built the ships, only the ones who sank them?" You chuckle. It's darkly funny and true. The sea has a short memory for heroes, but a long one for mistakes. A group of children runs down to the shore, cheering as another ship is launched. You watch them throw pebbles after it, a traditional gesture to bring luck. One pebble for each oar, one for the captain. Their laughter rings out over the water, mixing with the low thrum of waves against hulls. It's a small moment, but it feels timeless. The shipyard winds down toward evening. Workers rinse their hands in the shallows, tools are hung neatly in racks, and the scent of cedar fades as the breeze shifts. A few craftsmen linger, chatting quietly about tomorrow's work. One carves a small model ship from a leftover scrap of wood. You realize that for all their skill, these people never stop practicing. Every plank they shape, every rope they tie, carries centuries of inherited knowledge. As the sky turns pink and orange, the master shipwright joins you again, watching the sun sink behind the horizon. "The sea doesn't forgive mistakes," he says softly, "but she rewards respect." He glances at the rows of ships resting in the harbor, each one rocking gently like a heartbeat. "We give her our best work. She decides the rest." You sit beside him on a wooden beam, the two of you watching the reflection of the sunset ripple across the water. The colors shift slowly, from gold to crimson to violet. Somewhere behind you, a hammer strikes one last nail. The sound rings clear, then fades into the quiet. You think about how much effort goes into something so fleeting. A ship might last 20 years, maybe 30 if lucky, but its influence, its journeys, its cargo, its stories can ripple through millennia. The Phoenicians understood that. Their ships weren't just tools, they were vessels of memory. As the first stars blink awake overhead, the harbor lights begin to glow. You can hear laughter from the taverns, the soft murmur of prayers from the temple near the docks, and the distant, steady breath of the waves. Everything blends together, the wood, the sea, the people, into one long, continuous rhythm. The mist begins to creep back over the water, and you can just make out the silhouettes of ships rocking gently at anchor. Their masts sway like tall grass in the night wind. Somewhere, a sailor hums that same launch song again, soft enough that it feels like it's meant only for the sea. You close your eyes and let the sound carry you. The hammering fades, the air cools, and the world becomes small and slow again. The shipyard sleeps, but the ships dream of open water. The morning after the ship launches, you find yourself standing on the deck of one of those freshly built vessels, the ropes creaking softly as the tide swells beneath. The harbor of Tyre is behind you now, shrinking, shimmering, a cluster of purple-tinted walls and cedar roofs basking in the early light. The gulls cry overhead as if wishing you good luck, or laughing at your decision to trust your life to a floating piece of wood. The crew moves around you in a rhythm that feels both chaotic and perfectly choreographed. Oars slide into the water with smooth, steady strokes. The triangular sail flutters until it catches the wind, snapping taut with a deep, satisfying sound. The ship lurches forward, slowly at first, then with purpose. You're sailing now, part of the same current that's carried the Phoenicians for centuries. The sea is calm, though it always hides its moods. The ship rides lightly over small ripples, its hull whispering to the waves. You can smell the salt and the faint tang of pitch from the freshly sealed planks. One sailor hums a tune, a low, droning melody that seems designed to hypnotize the wind itself. Another passes by, balancing a clay amphora of fresh water on his shoulder as casually as if he were carrying a loaf of bread. You lean against the rail and look out across the horizon. The water seems endless, but you remind yourself that to these sailors, the Mediterranean isn't an abyss, it's a road. A Phoenician captain once called it the wide street between neighbors. You like that. Below deck, the cargo is neatly stacked. Jars of olive oil, bundles of cedar planks, dyed textiles, baskets of dates and figs, and even a small cage containing two very indignant pigeons. They're messenger birds, the ancient equivalent of your Wi-Fi connection. They'll fly back to Tyre with updates, assuming of course they don't decide to start a new life somewhere more scenic. You hear the captain call out an order, "Trim the sail," and the crew moves in perfect synchrony. You realize how much trust it takes to run a ship like this. Every person knows their role. Every rope, knot, and command carries centuries of refinement. The Phoenicians didn't just master shipbuilding, they mastered teamwork. It's why their vessels could travel farther and faster than anyone else's. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind as you watch them work. Phoenician ships reached as far as the western coast of Africa and possibly even the British Isles in search of tin. Some scholars believe they circumnavigated Africa entirely, long before European explorers even dreamed of it. You picture one of these sleek cedar ships gliding past the edge of the known world. No GPS, no charts, just faith in wood, stars, and instinct. Of course, historians still argue whether that grand African voyage really happened. Herodotus claimed the sailors saw the sun rising on the wrong side of the sky during their return, a detail that might actually support the story. But skeptics say it's too convenient, too legendary. Either way, it's a tale Phoenician sailors tell with a knowing smirk. The captain joins you at the rail, squinting toward the horizon. "You see that?" he says, pointing to a faint smudge of darker blue. "That's Cyprus, our first stop." You nod, pretending you can see it. All you can see is sea, but you appreciate his optimism. He tells you about the trading route, how the ships hop from one safe harbor to the next, never venturing too far from land if they can help it. "The sea's a fickle god," he says, "but she rewards caution." You smile. Phoenicians, it seems, are practical theologians. Around midday, the crew lowers the sail and lets the ship drift while they eat. Lunch is simple: flatbread, olives, dried fish, and wine diluted with seawater. You're offered some, and you try not to make a face when you taste it. It's briny. Refreshing, maybe, if you squint your imagination. It keeps, a sailor says with a grin, that's all that matters. You ask him how long the voyage will take. He shrugs. "As long as the gods want," he says, then adds, "but hopefully less than a week." You appreciate his realism. Another sailor nearby chuckles and says, "Last trip took 12 days. Storm followed us all the way from Sidon. I started talking to the fish by the end." The crew laughs, and you can tell they've all been there. As the afternoon sun burns hotter, a few men take turns diving into the sea to cool off, clambering back up the side like gleeful seals. You join them with your feet dangling over the edge, watching the wake trail behind in white froth. For a moment, it feels eternal. Just wood, water, and wind. Then, something catches your eye. A dark fin cutting the surface not far off. The crew notices too. Someone shouts, "Dolphin." Another mutters, "Or shark." The captain smirks. "Either way," he says, "don't drop your lunch." You watch the fin glide closer, only to see two sleek dolphins leap joyfully in tandem beside the ship. The sailors cheer. It's a good omen. In Phoenician lore, dolphins are messengers of Melkart, the city god of Tyre, and protectors of sailors. You breathe a little easier. The wind picks up as the day goes on. The ship leans gently with the gusts, and the crew adjusts the sail with practiced ease. You can feel the power of the vessel now, the way it slices through the waves like it was born to do it. And in a sense, it was. These ships, after all, are extensions of the land they came from. The same cedar that grows in the hills of Lebanon now rides the sea, carrying its homeland with it. You wander toward the prow, where a young helmsman hums softly as he steers. He tells you he's been to Egypt, to Carthage, even as far as Sardinia. The sea never ends, he says, eyes on the horizon. It just changes names. You like that too. Later, as dusk falls, the sky turns molten gold. The captain orders the sail lowered again, and the ship drifts in calm water. A cook lights a small clay brazier and roasts fish, the smell curling up into the salty air. You sit with the crew, eating in the fading light, listening to their stories of storms survived, ports visited, and the occasional haunted island that everyone swears exists, but no one can find again. A sailor mentions one such island where, he claims, the sands glow at night and the rocks hum when the tide is right. The others roll their eyes. You fell asleep in your wine, Harim, someone says. You dreamed it. Harim grins. Maybe, but dreams come from somewhere. You can't tell whether he's joking, but it's a good line. As night deepens, stars emerge, hundreds of them, crisp and cold in the dark sky. The helmsman points out the constellations, the Big Bear, the Pleiades, Orion's Belt. The Phoenicians navigate by these stars, their positions as familiar to them as the streets of Tyre. They even used the North Star long before the Greeks gave it a name. You lie back against a coil of rope, watching the stars ripple across the water. The sky and sea mirror each other perfectly. It's easy to forget which way is up. The captain joins you again, quiet now. You feel it? He asks. The sea breathing. You listen. The waves lap against the hull in slow, rhythmic whispers. The wood creaks. The sail flutters softly in the breeze. Everything seems alive, patient, eternal. You ask him if he ever gets tired of it. He chuckles. Every day, he says. And yet, every day I come back. You understand. Some loves aren't comfortable. They're irresistible. As you close your eyes, rocked gently by the ship's motion, you think about how these voyages shaped history. Without them, there would be no trade routes, no cultural exchange, no spread of alphabets and ideas. The Phoenicians built more than ships. They built bridges across the sea. Somewhere in the dark, a sailor begins to hum again, that same soft tune from morning. The water shimmers faintly in the starlight. You breathe deep, the air heavy with salt and cedar and sleep. The world narrows to sound and motion, the whisper of the waves, the creak of the hull, the deep, endless rhythm of the sea. By the time the first rays of dawn stretch across the sea, you're already approaching the island of Cyprus. The water shifts from deep indigo to turquoise, so clear you can see schools of silver fish darting beneath the hull. The smell of land, pine, wild thyme, a faint hint of smoke reaches you before the island itself comes into view. After days of open sea, it feels strange to smell earth again. The sailors perk up, joking, stretching their arms, checking their hair as though a festival awaits them. You can tell they've done this many times before, yet each landfall carries its own thrill. Cyprus isn't just a waypoint, it's a lifeline, a Phoenician trading post, a place to rest, to barter, and to fill the ship's belly before pressing westward again. As the ship drifts closer, you spot the harbor, a crescent of calm water lined with wooden piers and stone warehouses. The air hums with sound, hammers striking bronze, merchants shouting prices, donkeys braying as they haul carts of copper ore. Even from here, you can sense the rhythm of commerce, steady as a heartbeat. The captain calls the order to lower the sail. The oars dip into the water again, and you glide toward the dock. The moment the gangplank hits the pier, the smell of baked bread and tar hits you like a warm wave. You follow the crew ashore, feeling the ground sway slightly under your feet after days at sea. Cyprus feels both familiar and foreign. The architecture resembles Phoenicia's, flat-roofed stone houses with wide courtyards, but the colors are lighter, the air drier. Merchants from Tyre, Sidon, and Byblus mingle with locals and Aegean traders, shouting across the market in a dozen dialects. The result is a kind of living music, chaotic but oddly harmonious. The captain leads you to a shaded tavern near the docks. Best wine on the island, he promises. You sit at a wooden table while a boy brings out clay cups and a jug of deep red liquid that smells faintly of resin. It tastes like the sea itself had a fling with a vineyard. Sharp, salty, strangely addictive. As you sip, the captain explains why Cyprus is vital to the Phoenician world. Copper, he says, tapping the table for emphasis. It flows from these hills like blood. Mix it with tin and you get bronze, the metal that built the world. He's not exaggerating. Phoenician ships like yours carry copper from Cyprus, silver from Spain, gold from Egypt, and tin from distant Cornwall. These metals are the veins of ancient trade. A smith at the next table overhears and grins, holding up a gleaming bronze knife. Without us, no swords, no plows, no god statues, he says proudly. You sailors may move the goods, but we shape them. The captain laughs. Fair enough, he replies, but without us, you'd still be hammering stones. The smith raises his cup in mock salute, and you can't help but smile. Outside, the market is alive with color and motion. You wander among the stalls, the sun hot on your back, your sandals crunching against the busty ground. Traders from every corner of the Mediterranean hawk their wares: Egyptian linen, Greek pottery, Babylonian glass beads, and bundles of Tyrian purple cloth so rich it almost seems to glow. The purple catches your eye. The dye is worth its weight in silver, extracted from tens of thousands of tiny murex snails along the Phoenician coast. You touch a folded piece of cloth and wonder how many snails gave their lives for its royal sheen. Probably too many to count. A local merchant notices your curiosity. Careful, he says with a grin. That color makes kings arrogant. You laugh. He's not wrong. Entire empires have fallen trying to monopolize that purple. A quirky tidbit you overhear while browsing pottery makes you chuckle. Supposedly, Phoenician sailors once discovered the dye entirely by accident, after their dogs rolled in rotting sea snails and stained their fur. The story's probably apocryphal, but it's just plausible enough to be true. Historians still argue whether it's legend or lucky accident, though every Phoenician trader swears it happened in their own town. You stop at a stall selling carved amulets, tiny figures of gods and animals made from bone and lapis. The vendor insists each one offers protection at sea. This one keeps storms away, she says, holding up a small dolphin charm. And this one ensures you'll never run out of wine. You raise an eyebrow. That second one seems more useful. She winks. For sailors, always. As midday heat settles, the crew splits up, some heading to the baths, others to restock provisions. You follow the captain through narrow alleys toward the warehouses, where cedar crates are being loaded and unloaded. The smell of resin and fresh rope fills the air. Inside one dimly lit storeroom, you find Phoenician scribes at work, marking cargo with small, precise symbols. They're using the Phoenician alphabet, the ancestor of nearly every writing system that will follow. You watch one scribe jot down symbols with a reed stylus. Simple, eh? He says proudly. No pictures, just sounds. Anyone can learn. You think about how revolutionary that is. In a world where writing is often the privilege of priests and kings, the Phoenicians have made it practical, portable. Their traders can record deals, track shipments, and send messages without needing a temple's blessing. The alphabet is the secret engine of their empire. A boy runs in with a message from another ship, a roll of parchment sealed with wax. The scribe breaks it open and reads aloud. A report of safe arrival in Rhodes, a note on cargo prices, a polite jab about someone's dice-playing habits. You realize how connected these cities are, not through conquest, but communication. Later, you climb a hill overlooking the harbor. From here, you can see the web of ships spread across the sea, sails billowing like white petals. It looks like a living network, threads of wind and wood linking one civilization to another. You can almost feel it, the pulse of trade, the heartbeat of the ancient world. A priest of Malkart stands nearby, blessing departing ships with a smoking censer. He murmurs a prayer that smells faintly of myrrh and cedar resin. You ask him if he ever fears the sea's power. He smiles faintly. "We don't fear the sea," he says. "We negotiate with her." That feels perfectly Phoenician, respectful but never submissive. As evening falls, you return to the docks. The ship is loaded again, its hull heavy with copper ingots and jars of oil. The captain inspects the ropes one last time before waving the crew aboard. The sun dips low, setting the sky ablaze with gold and crimson. You can hear the gulls crying overhead, circling the masts like restless spirits. Before you cast off, the dock workers toss amphora shards into the water, an offering for safe return. The sound of the fragments hitting the surface is soft, almost musical. You watch them sink and think about how many such offerings lie beneath this harbor, each one a whisper from sailors long gone. The sail unfurls once more, catching the evening breeze. The ship eases away from the dock, gliding into open water. Behind you, the island fades into silhouette, a dark mass framed by the fading glow of the sun. Ahead, the sea stretches, wide and silent, waiting. The crew settles into their night routine. The helmsman hums quietly, the captain checks the stars, and you wrap yourself in a blanket of cool air and the scent of cedar. Somewhere below deck, someone starts telling a story about a sea god who fell in love with a mortal woman and built her a palace of coral. No one interrupts because that's what sailors do. They tell stories between the waves. The stars come out one by one, and soon the sky is full again, steady, ancient, familiar. You lie back, watching them reflect on the rippling water, and feel that same quiet contentment you've started to associate with the Phoenicians. The peace that comes not from stillness, but from motion. You close your eyes as the ship glides onward, guided by wind, wood, and whispers of the past. Somewhere in the distance, you can almost hear another port calling your name. By dawn, the horizon is already tinted rose and gold, and the ship cuts steadily through calm waters toward the Levantine coast. The air feels cooler this morning, and the wind carries with it a mingled scent of cedar and distant myrrh, a hint that you're nearing the trade ports of the southern world. You can tell by the mood of the sailors too. They're quieter now, focused, respectful. This stretch of the journey matters. The captain leans beside you at the prow, eyes fixed on the faint outline ahead. "That," he says softly, "is Byblos." The name rolls from his tongue like a blessing. You've heard of it, a city older than memory, older even than the myths told to explain it. Byblos is where the Phoenicians first learned to love the sea, where cedar met gold, and where gods and merchants once dined at the same tables. As you approach, the coastline sharpens, terraced hills climbing above the harbor, temples gleaming in the early sun, and wharves already crowded with ships from Egypt, Crete, and beyond. The water here is deep blue, shifting to jade as it nears the shallows. Wooden cranes creak as cargo is unloaded, and the smell of resin, grain, and fish hits you like a memory you didn't know you had. Byblos isn't just a city, it's a crossroads. Everything that flows through the ancient Mediterranean seems to stop here, if only to rest. The ship glides into its berth, and you follow the crew ashore once again, your sandals crunching against the sun-baked boards. The dockside is a living mosaic of motion. Merchants in linen robes counting amphorae, priests burning incense to ensure fair trade, and sailors arguing in half a dozen languages.
You catch snatches of Egyptian, Greek, and something that might be Babylonian. A Phoenician broker stands at the center of it all, balancing a reed stylus over a tablet, his voice as smooth as olive oil. He's calculating tariffs faster than most men can blink. The captain claps you on the shoulder. "We'll be here a day," he says. "Enough time to see how the land breathes." You nod. After days of open water, even the chaos of a port feels grounding. You wander uphill through the narrow lanes of Byblos, past houses built from pale limestone blocks, their flat roofs draped with drying nets and baskets of figs. The air hums with flies and the distant clang of bronze. At a small square, you pause before a fountain shaded by palms. A group of women fills jars with water, chatting idly about trade prices and the weather, exactly the kind of gossip that has powered human civilization since forever. One of them laughs and says, "They say a new ship from Tyre brought cedar fit for a pharaoh's tomb." Another snorts, "The pharaoh's tomb won't notice." You can't help but grin. Even the dead can't escape market commentary. From here, you can see the great temple of Baalat Gebal, the Lady of Byblos, rising on a rocky hill overlooking the sea. You climb towards it, following the smell of burning incense and the sound of low chanting. The temple's facade gleams in the sunlight, its columns carved with symbols of the goddess's protection: lotus flowers, doves, and discs of the rising sun. Inside, the air is cooler, heavy with smoke, and quiet. You remove your sandals at the threshold, feeling the smooth chill of the stone beneath your feet. Worshippers kneel before a golden statue of the goddess, her face serene, her hands outstretched. The priestess, dressed in deep purple robes, murmurs blessings for safe voyages and honest trade. You can't help but notice that even divinity here seems to appreciate commerce. The Phoenicians, you realize, don't separate the sacred from the practical. Their gods sail with them, trade with them, build ships with them. It's a spirituality anchored in daily life, a religion that smells like salt and cedar. A quirky tidbit slips into your thoughts as you watch a sailor tie a votive offering of a temple column. Some Phoenicians believe their gods actually traveled within certain ships, invisible but tangible, guiding the wind and calming the waves. Historians still argue whether that's myth or metaphor, but the sailors clearly don't care. For them, belief is ballast. It keeps them steady. When you step outside again, the sun is high, and the harbor glitters below like liquid bronze. You make your way down to the market, where trade never stops, not even for worship. Stalls overflow with copper ingots, ivory combs, honey jars, and rolled papyrus scrolls from Egypt. You pass one scribe demonstrating how to use the new Phoenician alphabet, carving simple lines into a clay tablet for a group of curious Egyptian merchants. "No birds, no snakes," he jokes, referring to the hieroglyphs, "just words you can write after lunch." Everyone laughs, though one Egyptian looks mildly offended. You stop at another stall selling perfume in delicate glass bottles. The merchant lifts one to your nose, and the scent, frankincense, cedar, and something citrusy, wraps around you like memory itself. "From Arabia," she says proudly, "brought by camel, traded by ship, worn by queens." You imagine a queen somewhere in Thebes smelling exactly like this. It's oddly comforting. As the afternoon drifts on, you find a shaded cafe near the water and sit watching the bustle. The sailors you recognize from your ship have already found entertainment. One is arm wrestling a local fisherman, another haggling over dice. You sip something cool and sweet made from date syrup, your body grateful for the stillness. From a nearby table, you overhear two traders discussing news from the west. They say Tyre's planning a colony beyond the pillars. The other scoffs. "No one sails that far. You'll fall off the world." The first shrugs. "Maybe, but the Tyrians like to test how far the god's patience goes." You smile. The Phoenicians never could resist a new horizon. By sunset, the light turns amber, and the city seems to glow from within. You walk along the outer wall,
overlooking the sea where dozens of ships bob gently, their sails furled, their hulls reflecting the fire of the fading sun. Below, workers patch sails and sing low work songs in time with their stitching. You recognize one of the tunes. It's the same the shipwright sang back in Tyre. You hum along, surprised to find you know the rhythm by heart now. The captain joins you, leaning against the parapet. This city, he says, was trading when half the world still hunted goats. You laugh softly. And it'll still be trading when the other half's forgotten how. He nods. That's the plan.
He points to the ships in the harbor. See that one? It's from Ugarit. And that one, Egyptian, by the color of its hull. We all speak different tongues, but gold translates well enough. There's a trace of admiration in his voice, maybe even pride. The sea doesn't care about borders, and neither, it seems, do the Phoenicians. As the stars begin to appear, the city quiets. Lanterns flicker to life along the piers, and somewhere in the distance, a lyre begins to play. The melody drifts through the evening air, soft and wistful, blending with the murmur of the tide. You walk back toward the ship, feeling the cobblestones cool beneath your feet.
At the gangplank, a young sailor sits sharpening a knife, humming the same tune. Leaving at dawn, you ask? He nods without looking up. Always at dawn. It's when the gods are still sleepy, less likely to notice us sneaking away. You laugh quietly, appreciating the superstition. On deck, the crew settles in for the night. The air smells of salt and oil lamps. The captain walks among the men, checking lines, whispering quiet encouragement. You lie back against the rail, watching the temple of Baalat Gebal glowing faintly on the hilltop like a star fallen to earth.
The waves lap gently against the hull, slow and rhythmic, as though the city itself is breathing. You think about everything you've seen, how each port, each trade, each ritual fits into something larger, a web of faith and commerce spun across the sea. The Phoenicians don't conquer the world, they connect it. The stars shimmer overhead, mirrored by the lights on the water. A soft wind carries the faint smell of cedar smoke from the city, mingled with the salt of the sea. You close your eyes, and it feels as though the ship, the city, and the sky are all part of one vast, slow-moving dream.
Morning arrives quietly. The horizon softens from indigo to pale gold, and the faint call of gulls ripples across the still harbor. The crew stirs, stretching, coiling ropes, muttering half-asleep prayers. The smell of boiled grain and honey drifts from the galley, mixing with the sharper scent of tar and brine. The ship's hull creaks, a living creature eager to move again. By the time the sun crowns the edge of the sea, the captain gives the order. The sails unfurl like pale wings, catching the light breeze that rolls off the coast. Byblos recedes slowly behind you, a scatter of white buildings, the temple's golden roof flashing once more before vanishing into the morning haze. Ahead lies the open sea once again, endless and shimmering, the kind of view that humbles even the boldest sailor. You stand near the prow, the wind brushing your face, and feel that quiet exhilaration that always comes with departure. The journey continues, not homeward yet, but onward. The next port is Sidon, smaller than Tyre, but older in pride and reputation. The captain calls it the city that taught the world to weave purple. The sea today is calm, and conversation flows freely among the sailors. You listen as they trade stories about their home ports, each one claiming their city builds the finest ships or brews the strongest wine. Someone mentions Sidon's glassblowers, another its perfumers. A third swears that no city rivals its hospitality, so long as you pay in silver, not promises. Laughter follows. Hours pass gently, marked by the rhythm of oars dipping into the water and the creak of timber adjusting to the waves. You find yourself slipping into a sort of waking meditation. The ocean's endless shimmer seems to blur time itself. You begin to understand why sailors, more than anyone else, learn patience.
By afternoon, the outline of Sidon appears, a slender crescent of land curving out into the sea. The harbor is lively even from a distance, its docks thick with masts and fluttering banners. The smell of smoke and spice reaches you long before the anchor drops. Unlike Byblos, whose grandeur speaks of gods and memory, Sidon feels alive with movement, a city that breathes commerce as naturally as air. As the ship glides toward the dock, a bell rings from the watchtower, announcing your arrival. Port officials hurry forward, waving tablets and shouting greetings. The captain exchanges familiar words with them, hands over a small bronze seal, and soon enough, you're free to disembark. Sidon is dazzling. The streets are paved with smooth limestone that catches the sunlight and blinds you momentarily. Rows of palm trees line the main avenue, their fronds swaying lazily. Shops spill their wares onto the streets, embroidered linen, bronze trinkets, small jars filled with indigo dye, bundles of cinnamon, and ivory combs carved with exquisite detail. Every corner seems to hold a new scent: salt, oil, resin, and wine blending into a strange, luxurious perfume. A group of glassblowers has set up near the waterfront. You pause to watch as one of them gathers molten glass on the end of a pipe, blowing it into a shimmering bubble. It glows orange at first, then cools to transparent blue as it's shaped into a delicate vessel. The craftsman holds it to the light, admiring his work. "We trade these as far as Cyprus," he tells you with quiet pride. "The world may not remember our kings, but they'll remember our glass." You nod. It's a fair trade. Impermanence made beautiful. Further inland, you reach the market square. A fountain burbles at the center, surrounded by traders from every corner of the known world. Egyptian merchants display papyrus scrolls, Babylonian dealers lay out fine woven rugs, and a Greek sailor hawks olive oil in clay jars. You realize that this is more than a market. It's a map of civilization condensed into a single square. A perfume seller waves you over. Her stall is shaded with linen, and small clay flasks fill the table in neat rows. She offers you one, uncorking it carefully. The scent that rises is rich and deep: musk, myrrh, and something floral you can't name. "From the mountains beyond Damascus," she says. "We distill it drop by drop. It lasts longer than a lover's promise." You smile at the poetry of her pitch and buy a small flask. She ties it with a purple cord and says, "Carry this when you sail next. The goddess of the wind favors sweet scents." You slip it into your satchel, wondering if it's a superstition or just good marketing. The captain finds you soon after, laughing as he spots the perfume flask. "Ah, Sidon's charm," he says. "She sells dreams by the drop." Then his tone softens. "Come, there's something you should see." He leads you up the hillside beyond the market, where the city thins into villas and gardens. The view from here is breathtaking, the harbor below teeming with ships, and beyond it the open sea stretching into forever. Near the top stands a temple smaller than Byblos's but elegant, built of polished sandstone. Its columns are painted with fading blues and reds, and the air around it hums with the sound of bees drifting between potted oleanders. "This," the captain says quietly, "is the temple of Melkart." Melkart, the god of kings and voyagers, the patron of Tyre and Sidon alike. Sailors light lamps to him before each voyage, hoping he'll steer their ships through calm waters. Inside, the air is cool and still. Oil lamps flicker in bronze holders, casting soft halos on the carved walls. You watch as the captain kneels briefly, whispering something under his breath. He doesn't seem like a man given to prayer, but here, humility comes naturally. An older priest approaches, smiling faintly. "You come from Tyre?" the priest asks. The captain nods. "Then Melkart will walk with you." The priest gestures toward a wall painting, faded but beautiful, showing the god standing upon the waves, holding both a hammer and a ship's rudder, strength and direction in one image. You linger for a while, tracing the faint outlines of the mural with your eyes. Perhaps that's what all sailors seek, not conquest or riches, but a sense of direction, a compass that doesn't waver, even when the stars hide.
When you step outside again, the sun has begun to lower, gilding the city in bronze and honey. Children run through the streets chasing each other, their laughter mixing with the calls of vendors packing up their stalls. A potter wheels his cart home. Fishermen mend their nets near the shore. The rhythm of the day winds down, slow and sure, like the sea itself catching its breath. You follow the captain back toward the docks. The scent of roasting fish drifts through the air, mingled with the faint sweetness of date wine. Someone's playing a flute nearby, a soft, lilting tune that fits perfectly with the deep orange of the sunset. The ship waits at anchor, sails furled, its hull glowing faintly in the evening light. As you step aboard, you take one last look at Sidon. The city is quieter now, but the glow of its lamps mirrors the stars beginning to appear above. You realize that every Phoenician port feels like a reflection of the same soul. Tyre's ambition, Byblus's memory, Sidon's grace, all bound by the same sea. The captain leans against the railing beside you. "We'll head for Cyprus at dawn," he says. "The winds will be fair." You nod, though part of you feels reluctant to leave. Sidon has a gentleness that invites you to stay. As darkness deepens, the waves slap softly against the hull, steady and patient. Lanterns swing in the breeze, casting golden circles that move like slow fireflies. Somewhere below deck, a sailor begins to sing, a low, wordless melody that sounds older than language itself. One by one, others join in, their voices weaving together into a lullaby for the sea. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of their song blend with the gentle rocking of the ship. The scent of cedar oil and salt fills the air. It's a quiet moment, suspended between places, between worlds. You think of the goddess of Byblos, the craftsmen of Sidon, the traders of Tyre, all of them parts of one story, carried by wind and tide. Above, the stars shimmer like distant lanterns marking a road you cannot see but somehow trust. The sea hums softly beneath you, and sleep comes easily, like a tide returning home. The first hints of light stretch across the horizon, a soft, sleepy pink that blends into the calm blue of the morning sea. You're already awake, swaying gently with the motion of the ship as it cuts through the water. The crew moves about with practiced ease, their movements fluid and almost silent. It's the sort of morning that makes you grateful for every plank beneath your feet and every breeze at your back. The ship glides steadily toward its next stop, the small island of Arwat, perched just off the Syrian coast. Unlike the grand harbors of Tyre or Byblos, Arwat is modest, almost tucked away, a cluster of whitewashed houses that glimmer like pearls in the morning light. Still, it plays its part in the network of Phoenician trade, offering a safe harbor and a place to exchange information and goods. As you approach, you notice the activity on the docks. Fishermen unload their nets, bundles of salt and dried fish stacked neatly beside them. Small merchant boats bob in the gentle waves, each one laden with amphorae of olive oil, wine, or resin. The air is thick with the smell of salt, seaweed, and the faint tang of fish, but somehow it feels invigorating, like a reminder of the sea's generosity. The gangplank drops, and the crew disembarks with their usual rhythm. You follow behind, feeling the solid earth under your feet after days at sea. The town is quiet in a way that feels intimate, like it's sharing a secret with you. Narrow alleys wind between the houses, and children dart past, laughing and chasing one another with sticks fashioned into swords. Somewhere, a goat bleats, and you can't help but grin at the familiar chaos of human life. The captain leads you toward a small square near the water, where a few merchants have already set up their stalls. You see jars of honey, hand-carved wooden combs, and bundles of linen dyed in muted earth tones. You pause to watch a potter at work, spinning clay on a wheel and shaping it with fingers that seem to dance in rhythm with the motion of the wheel. He lifts the finished jug and holds it to the sunlight, revealing its smooth surface and subtle swirls of color. For trade, he says with a grin, or for wine if you're feeling lucky.
You wander through the square, taking in the details. A small shrine tucked into a corner, carved with symbols of Melkart and Baalat, the gods of the sea and the city. A basket of dried figs that smells sweet enough to make your mouth water. A group of children trying to sell tiny carved dolphins to passing sailors. Every element feels alive, vibrating with history and purpose. A quirky tidbit catches your ear. Some Arwat fishermen believe that dolphins act as guides for lost sailors, leading them safely to harbor. One of the sailors from your ship leans over and whispers. Or maybe they're just nosy. Hard to tell which. You chuckle. Historians still argue whether this belief was common across Phoenician ports or a local legend, but either way, it gives the harbor a peculiar charm.
The captain gestures toward a small fort on the hill overlooking the town. That's our lookout, he says. From here, you can see any approaching ship before it's even close. The fort is modest, a sturdy rectangle of stone with narrow slits for windows. Soldiers stand at attention, spears in hand, scanning the horizon. The design is simple but effective. Phoenician pragmatism at work.
As the sun rises higher, the harbor comes alive. Small boats ferry goods to larger ships, merchants shout their prices, and the smell of freshly baked bread drifts from a nearby bakery. You follow the captain along the quay, past piles of cedar planks waiting to be loaded onto the ships. The wood gleams in the morning light, fragrant and alive, a reminder that these ships are more than tools. They're extensions of the land and the people who built them.
Arwad was the only inhabited island under Phoenician control and played a crucial role as a naval outpost. Its strategic location allowed the Phoenicians to monitor trade routes and maintain influence over the surrounding waters. You look out over the waves, imagining small fleets of cedar ships gliding past the island, carrying goods and ideas across the Mediterranean. You wander further along the waterfront and notice a group of scribes seated beneath a shaded pavilion. They're busy marking amphora and tallying inventories, using the Phoenician alphabet to track goods and transactions. Their movements are precise, almost mechanical, yet there's an elegance in the simplicity of their script. You realize how revolutionary this system was, allowing merchants and sailors to communicate, record, and trade across vast distances without the need for priests or scholars. Nearby, a young boy runs past, carrying a small makeshift kite shaped like a fish. It flutters behind him, snatching at the wind as he weaves through the crowd. The scene is so ordinary that it almost feels timeless, like it could have occurred 1,000 years ago or tomorrow. You can almost see the same children running along the docks centuries from now, oblivious to history but carrying its pulse in their laughter. The captain calls the crew back to the ship, and you notice the meticulous way they prepare for departure. Sails are checked, ropes coiled, oars greased. The ship itself seems to breathe, its cedar planks creaking softly as if testing the water beneath. You realize that every ship is a living organism, shaped by human hands, but alive in its interaction with wind and wave. As the vessel leaves the harbor, you glance back at Arwood. The town is small, but its significance is immense. It's a reminder that even the tiniest outpost can play a vital role in a network of commerce, culture, and communication. The Phoenicians understood this better than anyone. Small islands, seemingly insignificant ports, became nodes in a vast maritime web. The wind picks up, filling the sails and sending the ship gliding smoothly over the water. The crew moves with practiced ease, each action a blend of muscle memory and instinct. You stand at the rail, watching the waves sparkle in the morning light, feeling the gentle rhythm of the sea beneath your feet. "You'll need it," he says with a grin.
The sun isn't playing today. You sip gratefully, tasting the faint saltiness of the sea mangled with the sweetness of fresh spring water. It's a simple pleasure, but somehow perfect. You lean back against the rail, letting the sun warm your face, and think about the interconnectedness of these ports. The cedar ships, the trade of metals and dyes, the scribes marking their ledgers, the gods watching over the sailors. Every piece matters. Every act contributes to something larger than any one person or city. A soft breeze carries the faint scent of resin and pine, and somewhere below deck, a sailor begins humming a tune you've heard before. A low, steady melody that seems older than memory itself. It blends with the sound of the waves, the creaking of the ship, and the cries of distant seabirds. You close your eyes, letting the music and the motion of the sea lull you into a gentle reverie. Historians still argue whether small ports like Arwood were primarily defensive outposts or hubs of commerce. But as you watch the crew work and the harbor life continue, it feels as though they were both. Places where strategy and trade intertwined seamlessly. And in that thought, you find a quiet satisfaction. Even the smallest efforts, repeated across generations, can shape the course of history. As the sun climbs higher, the ship settles into a steady rhythm, heading toward its next destination. You lie back against the deck, the wind tugging gently at your hair, the salt air filling your lungs. Somewhere ahead, the next port waits, the next exchange of goods, stories, and dreams. And for now, the world feels endless and slow, like a perfect sigh of the Mediterranean itself. The sun rises higher, warming the deck as the ship leaves Arwad behind. The sea glimmers, a ribbon of molten blue stretching endlessly in both directions. You lean against the railing, feeling the gentle roll of the waves beneath you, the wind tugging at your hair, and the faint scent of cedar mingling with salt. The crew moves around you in calm, efficient rhythm, each man performing his role without fuss, as if the ship itself is a living organism and they are extensions of its consciousness. You notice the helmsman scanning the horizon with a practiced eye. He mutters to himself about the wind direction and the current, and you realize that navigation is both an art and a science for these sailors. Without modern instruments, the Phoenicians rely on the stars, the shape of the waves, and subtle shifts in the wind. Every motion of the ship, every adjustment of the sail is a conversation with nature itself. Ahead, the faint outline of the Syrian coast emerges. The coastline is rugged, with cliffs rising from the water and small villages clinging to the hillsides like birds' nests. The ship cuts a smooth line through the sea, and you feel the tension and anticipation of arriving at yet another port. For the Phoenicians, every harbor is a junction, a place of opportunity, of trade, and of knowledge. They are building more than ships. They are weaving a network of commerce and culture that stretches across the Mediterranean. The captain calls the crew together to check the sails and ropes before docking. His movements are methodical, almost meditative. Watching him, you realize that the Phoenicians' mastery of the sea depends as much on patience and observation as on raw strength. Each knot, each adjustment, each command has been refined over generations. Even now, as the sun climbs, there is a sense of ritual in every action. You wander to the prow and look at the approaching port of Tripolis. Unlike Tyre or Byblos, Tripolis is smaller, quieter, yet no less important. Its harbor is protected by a natural bay, and small boats dart between larger vessels like busy insects. You can see the outlines of warehouses stacked neatly along the quay, the smoke from cooking fires rising into the morning air. Merchants shout to each other in a mix of Phoenician, Greek, and Egyptian, negotiating prices, exchanging goods, and exchanging news. The smell of salt water mingles with the aroma of fresh bread and roasting fish. You take a deep breath and notice a subtle scent of resin and herbs, likely cedar oil and thyme, mixed into the air by the motion of the harbor. Everything here feels alive, vibrant, yet harmonious, a testament to the balance the Phoenicians have struck between commerce and culture. Some sailors claim that Tripolis is haunted by the spirits of merchants who were too greedy, wandering the harbor at night, whispering warnings to those who would overreach. Historians still argue whether these tales were widespread superstition or simply local folklore, but you notice that even today, the crew approaches the port with a touch of reverence, as though respecting an unseen presence is part of safe passage. You follow the captain along the quay as he meets with local officials. Amphorae of olive oil, wine, and resin are unloaded with practiced efficiency, and you notice the scribes recording each transaction in neat rows of Phoenician script. The alphabet, so simple yet revolutionary, allows merchants to communicate across vast distances, keeping track of goods and payments with minimal confusion. You realize that without this system, the complex network of trade the Phoenicians have built could not exist. As the day progresses, you explore the market. Tripolis is alive with colors and textures, vibrant textiles dyed with indigo and murex, jars of honey and wine, baskets of dates and figs, and small trinkets carved from ivory and wood. Children run between the stalls, laughing and selling simple toys made from reeds or clay. You pause at a stall where a merchant is demonstrating a technique for carving miniature ships from cedar. The precision is astonishing, and you realize that the Phoenicians' attention to detail extends from the grandest vessel to the smallest toy. Nearby, a perfumer opens a small flask, letting the scent of frankincense and myrrh drift through the air. From the deserts beyond Damascus, he explains, a single drop can last months at sea. You inhale, feeling the fragrance cling to your senses, imagining it carried across the waves to distant ports, mingling with the odors of every harbor along the route. By late afternoon, the crew begins preparing to depart. The amphorae are restocked, sails inspected, and lines checked. The captain walks the deck, his expression calm but focused. He stops at the rail, looking out over the water, and you sense a moment of quiet reflection. This is not just a ship leaving port. It is a continuation of a journey, a thread in a vast web of trade and travel. Tripolis was an essential stop for Phoenician traders, serving as a waypoint between the Levantine coast and ports further west. Its strategic location allowed for restocking, maintenance, and exchange of information, a crucial link in the network that spread goods, ideas, and culture across the Mediterranean. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the harbor, the ship begins to glide away from the dock. The crew works in unison, hoisting sails and adjusting ropes with effortless precision. The water catches the final light of day, glittering like a trail of gold behind the ship. You watch as Tripolis recedes, the city shrinking into a patchwork of stone, wood, and smoke. Below deck, the sailors settle into their evening routine. Someone hums a familiar tune, and it drifts through the ship like a soft lullaby. You notice the gentle sway of the vessel, the rhythmic slap of waves against the hull, and the soft rustle of the sails in the breeze. It is a hypnotic, calming rhythm, one that eases the mind and body alike. Historians still argue whether the Phoenicians' mastery of the Mediterranean came more from technological innovation or cultural adaptability. But standing here on the deck, watching the sunset behind Tripolis, it feels clear that both played a role. Their ships, their trade networks, and their knowledge of the sea were inseparable from the way they lived, thought, and worshipped. As night falls, the stars begin to appear, twinkling over the dark expanse of water. The sailors point out familiar constellations: Orion, the Pleiades, the North Star, navigational guides passed down through generations. You lie back against the deck, letting the wind brush your face,
the scent of cedar and salt mingling with the faint perfume from the market. The gentle rocking of the ship, the murmurs of the crew, and the distant calls of seabirds create a symphony that soothes your thoughts. You think about the ports you visited, the markets, the temples, the people, and the stories that carry across the waves. Each one is a thread in the vast tapestry of Phoenician maritime life, a network of human endeavor stretching from island to island, shore to shore. You close your eyes and let yourself drift into that rhythm, the motion of the ship echoing the pulse of the sea. The horizon fades into darkness, the stars wheel overhead, and you feel yourself becoming part of the same story that the Phoenicians have been writing for centuries, one of exploration, connection, and quiet, patient mastery of the waves. Dawn creeps gently over the horizon, painting the sky in pale shades of lavender and gold. You wake to the quiet lapping of water against the hull and the faint creak of the ship, a rhythm you've come to find comforting, almost hypnotic. The crew moves with the same deliberate ease, untangling ropes, checking sails, and murmuring greetings to one another. It's the sort of morning that feels suspended in time, a moment caught between night and the full light of day. Ahead, the Mediterranean stretches endlessly, a gleaming expanse of water that mirrors the sky. The ship sails steadily toward the island of Rhodes, a known haven and an emerging hub in the network of Phoenician trade. You can feel the excitement among the crew, tempered by the calm professionalism that comes from experience. Every trip to Rhodes carries promise, new goods, news from distant ports, and, perhaps, the small, quiet surprises that make life at sea worth living. The first sight of Rhodes is subtle, a pale ribbon of coastline with hills rising gently in the distance. As you draw closer, the harbor comes into view, dotted with ships of all shapes and sizes. Some are Phoenician, recognizable by their sleek cedar hulls and triangular sails, while others hail from Greek and Egyptian ports. The air carries a melange of scents: salt, resin, spices, and smoke from cooking fires. It's a bustling, living port, smaller than Tyre or Byblos, but no less vibrant. The gangplank drops, and the crew disembarks with practiced efficiency. You follow, feeling the solid cobblestones beneath your feet, a satisfying contrast to the sway of the ship. Rhodes itself feels different from previous ports, more sun-drenched, more open, and with a slightly sharper edge to its energy. Merchants shout their prices, sailors haggle over mooring space, and children weave through the crowd selling small trinkets and carved toys. The city pulses with movement, yet it never feels chaotic. There's an underlying rhythm that ties everything together. A small market sits near the waterfront, and you wander among the stalls. Olive oil glistens in clay amphorae, honey glows golden in woven baskets, and bundles of linen are dyed in colors both rich and subtle. One vendor demonstrates the creation of dyed fabric using murex snails, a painstaking process that produces the iconic Phoenician purple. "Worth its weight in silver," he says with a wink. You can't help but smile. Humans have always been fascinated by color, by rarity, by beauty. Nearby, a glassblower works with molten sand, shaping it into delicate vessels that shimmer as he spins the pipe and blows through it. You pause, mesmerized by the transformation of simple elements into something exquisite. Someone whispers that Phoenician glass was prized from Egypt to Greece, valued not just for its utility, but for its artistry. Historians still argue whether Phoenician techniques were entirely original or influenced by earlier cultures, but standing here, you don't need an answer. The beauty speaks for itself. Walking further into the city, you notice a small temple perched atop a gentle rise. Its columns gleam in the sun, adorned with simple but elegant carvings of dolphins, lions, and the familiar symbols of Melkart. You step inside, removing your sandals as the floor cools your feet. Oil lamps flicker, casting shadows that dance gently across the walls. Worshippers murmur prayers for safe passage and good fortune, and you feel a peculiar sense of calm settle over you. A quirky detail captures your attention. Some sailors believe that lighting a lamp in this temple ensures the wind will favor your voyage, even if the sky is still calm. Whether this is superstition or ritual, you can see the logic. After days at sea, any small measure that promises safety feels worth observing. The captain kneels briefly, whispering something under his breath, a private offering to the god who guides all Phoenician ships. Exiting the temple, you wander toward a narrow street lined with workshops and artisans' homes. Bronzesmiths hammer metal into delicate shapes. Perfumers mix fragrant oils in small shaded courtyards. And potters shape clay into amphorae and vessels for trade. Every craft is precise, honed over generations, a marriage of utility and artistry. The smell of resin, metal, and fresh earth fills the air, mingling with the tang of salt and the faint sweetness of dried fruit from nearby markets. You stop at a small cafe where sailors sip wine and share news. One tells of a new colony being planned beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a distant western edge of the known world. Another talks about copper arriving from Cyprus, destined for distant markets. You sip a cool drink, letting the flavors linger, and marvel at how interconnected this world has become. How a small island like Rhodes can feel like a crossroads, linking cities, ideas, and cultures across hundreds of miles of open sea. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind as a waypoint for trade routes connecting the Levantine coast to the Aegean and beyond. Its position allowed merchants to rest, replenish, and exchange news, reinforcing the Phoenicians' dominance as maritime traders. Every ship that passed through here was part of a broader web of commerce that spanned the Mediterranean. By late afternoon, the ship is ready to depart. The crew loads the amphorae, checks the rigging, and secures the cargo. You stand at the prow, watching the harbor fade into the distance. The sunlight glints off the water, a shimmering path leading toward the next leg of your journey. You realize how much the Phoenicians relied on these small but vital stops. Without them, the delicate balance of trade, communication, and culture would collapse. The wind catches the sails, and the ship begins to glide over the water with ease. Below deck, someone hums a familiar melody, a simple tune that echoes softly through the hull. You lie back, letting the rhythm of the sea lull you into reflection. You think of Tyre, Byblus, Sidon, Arlod, and now Rhodes, each port distinct, yet all part of the same network. Each city, each market, each temple contributes to a story larger than any individual, a story written across the waves in wood, rope, and song. A quirky observation lingers in your mind. Some sailors insist that the dolphins swimming alongside the ship act as guardians, guiding the vessel away from hidden shoals and reefs. Historians still argue whether this was widely believed or localized lore, but seeing the playful animals slip through the waves, you feel comforted by the idea. The sea, after all, is both generous and capricious, and even the smallest protection feels precious. As night falls, the stars emerge, mirrored in the gentle sway of the water. The ship hums softly, a vessel alive with history and purpose. Lanterns flicker along the deck, casting a warm glow over the crew. You lie back, inhaling the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and distant spices, letting the steady motion of the sea carry you into a sense of calm. Each port visited, each mile sailed, reinforces the quiet mastery of the Phoenicians, the art of moving through the world with patience, skill, and a touch of reverence for both land and sea. You close your eyes, letting the lull of the ship and the whispers of the wind ease your thoughts. The journey continues, the network of ports stretching behind and ahead. And for now, you are content to drift along with it, part of the rhythm of a civilization built not by conquest, but by connection, trade, and the gentle persistence of sailors who knew the value of every harbor along the way. The morning sun spills gently across the deck,
brushing your face with its warm light as the ship glides through calm, sparkling waters. You stretch, feeling the subtle sway of the hull beneath you, and inhale deeply, the scent of salt, resin, and the faint tang of fresh cedar filling your lungs. Today, the course takes you towards Cyprus, a larger island known for its copper mines and thriving ports. The crew is already at work, adjusting sails, coiling ropes, and exchanging soft words in a rhythm that feels almost musical against the backdrop of lapping waves. As you lean against the rail, the captain comes up beside you, pointing to the distant horizon. "See that?" he says. "That's where the real work begins, where the goods meet the markets and the reputation of Tyre sails ahead of us." Cyprus is different from the Levantine ports. It's expansive, rich in natural resources, and steeped in the commerce that will feed the Phoenician network for generations. Hours pass as the ship glides steadily over the deep blue sea. The crew moves with practiced ease, each action coordinated, each man aware of the delicate balance that keeps the vessel steady. You notice the helmsman adjusting the rudder with a subtle twist, the navigator scanning the horizon, and a few sailors measuring the wind with their arms spread wide. Every motion, however small, is part of an intricate dance that has been refined over centuries. As Cyprus comes into view, the landscape begins to shift. Unlike the steep cliffs and narrow bays of the previous ports, the coast here slopes gently, dotted with fields of copper ore, olive groves, and clusters of small villages. The harbor sprawls outward, larger than anything you've seen since Tyre, with warehouses and docks humming with activity. Ships of all sizes maneuver through the water, some heavily laden with goods, others more modest, their crews preparing to trade, barter, or repair before heading out again. Stepping ashore, the smell of resin, smoke, and warm earth fills your senses. The streets are alive with merchants, artisans, and sailors, each contributing to the pulse of the port. You pass a workshop where copper ingots are being hammered and shaped, the rhythmic clang of metal striking metal echoing down the street. Nearby, a perfumer mixes fragrant oils in small glass flasks, their scents mingling with the salty air. You breathe in deeply, captivated by the combination of industry and artistry. Some local legends suggest that certain copper mines in Cyprus are protected by spirits who can cause sudden fog or mislead miners if they fail to show respect. Historians still argue whether these stories were widespread or confined to isolated communities, but standing here among the busy port, you can see why the sailors might indulge the belief, an extra measure of caution in a world that often teeters between fortune and disaster. You wander through the marketplace, where merchants hawk everything from fine textiles to amphorae of wine, honey, and olive oil. Small children weave through the crowd, offering carved figurines or shells, their laughter punctuating the hum of commerce. You notice one trader demonstrating the Phoenician alphabet on a clay tablet, tallying goods with precise, deliberate marks. It's a reminder of how essential this simple writing system is to trade, allowing merchants to communicate across distances without confusion or misinterpretation. Nearby, a sailor points out a ship with a distinctive Tyrian hull, noting its quality and balance. "That's craftsmanship you can trust," he says quietly. You nod, realizing how the Phoenicians' reputation is carried not only by words, but by the very shape and performance of their vessels. Each ship is both a tool and a messenger, sailing ahead with the promise of reliability, speed, and skill. As midday approaches, you follow the captain to a small hill overlooking the harbor. From this vantage, the expanse of Cyprus becomes clear. Fields stretch inland, dotted with villages and workshops. The coast curves gently, forming natural bays, and the harbor brims with ships, each waiting for a chance to exchange goods or receive guidance from the experienced navigators of Tyre. The view is humbling, a visual testament to the scale of Phoenician enterprise and the careful orchestration required to sustain it. A mainstream historical fact surfaces in your thoughts. Cyprus was a vital source of copper, which was essential not only for tools and weapons, but also for trade throughout the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians recognized the strategic value of controlling access to these resources, ensuring that their fleets could carry the raw material to distant ports efficiently and safely.
You wander back down into the heart of the city, past workshops where craftsmen shape copper, clay, and wood into items of both utility and beauty. A glassblower demonstrates the transformation of sand into delicate vessels, while a perfumer mixes oils that will travel across the sea to foreign markets. The variety of crafts and trades here is astonishing, a living tapestry of human ingenuity. As afternoon deepens, the crew begins preparations for departure. Cargo is secured, sails are inspected, and the ship itself seems to breathe, anticipating the next journey. The captain walks the deck, speaking quietly with his officers, checking lines and offering guidance. You notice the care in his movements, a blend of practicality and respect for both the vessel and the sea it navigates. The ship finally glides away from Cyprus, the sun lowering toward the horizon and casting a golden glow over the water. Below deck, sailors hum familiar tunes, their voices merging with the gentle slap of waves against the hull. Lanterns flicker softly as the evening approaches, casting warm light on the deck and crew. You lean back against the rail, inhaling the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and copper. The gentle rocking of the ship, the rhythm of the crew, and the hum of the ocean create a calm, meditative atmosphere. Historians still argue about the exact methods Phoenicians used to manage trade across such distant ports, but witnessing it firsthand, you realize it was as much about relationships, observation, and subtle coordination as it was about skill and technology. As darkness falls, the stars begin to emerge, mirrored in the calm waters below. The sailors point out familiar constellations, Orion, the Pleiades, the North Star, using them to guide the ship toward the next destination. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the waves, the hum of voices, and the scent of the sea carry you into a quiet reverie. The journey continues, the network of ports stretching behind and ahead, and you feel yourself part of the same story the Phoenicians have been writing for centuries. It's a story of patience, skill, and subtle mastery of the waves, of cities, of commerce, and of human ingenuity, gently unfolding beneath the vast Mediterranean sky. The morning air drifts in cool and salty, carrying the scent of open water and the faint aroma of cedar from the ship's hull. You wake slowly, letting the gentle rocking of the vessel ease the sleep from your body. The crew moves with quiet efficiency, adjusting sails and checking ropes, their murmured exchanges almost melodic against the soft slap of waves. Today, the course leads toward the coast of Carthage, the distant western jewel of the Phoenician network, a city both legendary and alive with commerce. The open sea stretches endlessly before you, the horizon blurring slightly where the sky meets the water. The helmsman tilts the rudder, catching a subtle current that nudges the ship forward. You watch, fascinated, as the vessel responds, leaning into the wind, rocking with the waves, and gliding with a graceful, practiced precision. Every motion feels deliberate, a quiet testament to centuries of seafaring knowledge passed down through generations. Carthage is not just another port, it is a hub, a culmination of Phoenician ambition, trade, and ingenuity. Even from a distance, you can see the glint of buildings, the rise of walls, and the faint shimmer of harbors filled with ships. The city's position is strategic, offering access to both the Mediterranean and inland trade routes. Its streets will be bustling with merchants, artisans, and sailors, each contributing to the pulse of a city that thrives on connection. As you draw nearer, the distinctive red-tinted clay of Carthage's buildings becomes clearer, blending harmoniously with whitewashed structures. Smoke curls lazily from cooking fires along the waterfront, carrying the smell of roasted grains,
herbs, and the occasional hint of fish. The harbor is alive with activity. Ships of all sizes maneuver skillfully, their crews shouting orders, hauling goods, and negotiating space with an almost choreographed precision.
Stepping ashore, you feel the solid ground beneath your feet, a welcome contrast to the rolling sea. The streets are a mosaic of stone and earth, lined with workshops, markets, and small temples. Merchants display a dazzling variety of goods. Finely woven textiles dyed in brilliant hues, amphorae brimming with wine and oil, bundles of herbs and spices, and delicate carved figurines. The market hums with life, a symphony of voices, movement, and scents. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind to rival Tyre and Sidon in wealth and influence, serving as the center of Phoenician expansion into the western Mediterranean. Its strategic location allowed it to control trade routes, gather resources from surrounding lands, and project influence far beyond its immediate shores. Standing here, you can almost feel the subtle power emanating from the city, a quiet dominance built on commerce rather than conquest. You wander further, drawn to a small square where artisans demonstrate their skills. A bronzesmith hammers delicately, shaping intricate amulets, while a potter spins clay into perfect amphorae. Nearby, a perfumer mixes fragrant oils, the scents of myrrh, frankincense, and cedar blending into the air. It's a place where craft and trade meet, where the mundane becomes extraordinary through precision, patience, and a touch of artistry. A quirky observation catches your attention. Some Carthaginian sailors claim that placing a small coin under a newly built ship's mast will protect it from storms, a superstition carried from Tyre and Bibles. Historians still argue whether such rituals were widespread or limited to isolated crews, but you can see the logic, a tiny act of hope in a vast, unpredictable sea. As the day deepens, the harbor grows even busier. You watch a fleet of cedar ships being loaded with copper, wine, and textiles, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. The crew moves with practiced efficiency, shouting brief commands and exchanging nods that speak volumes. Each person knows their role intimately, and the rhythm of their work mirrors the steady pulse of the sea itself. You wander toward a temple perched atop a gentle rise overlooking the city. Its columns gleam faintly in the sun, adorned with carvings of lions, dolphins, and symbols of Melkart. Inside, the air is cool and still, carrying the faint scent of burning oil lamps. Sailors and merchants offer quiet prayers for safe passage, and you feel a calming reverence settle over you. The temple, small yet dignified, embodies the Phoenicians' respect for the divine forces that guide their lives and their ships. Nearby, a scholar scribes records on clay tablets, using the Phoenician alphabet to track goods, trade agreements, and navigational data. You watch his careful hand, realizing how revolutionary this writing system is. It allows communication across vast distances, recording transactions and ensuring consistency in trade. Without such innovation, the network of ports you visited would collapse under the weight of uncertainty and error. By afternoon, you follow the captain along the city walls, which rise high above the harbor. From this vantage, Carthage stretches in every direction, a living, breathing hub of commerce and culture. The view is humbling. Warehouses, docks, temples, and markets spread beneath you, each element a cog in the grand machine of Phoenician maritime life. You understand how this city, though distant, is inextricably linked to Tyre, Byblos, Sidon, Arwad, and Rhodes, a node in a network that stretches across the Mediterranean. A breeze carries the faint scent of resin and herbs, blending with the brine of the sea. You notice a small group of children playing near the docks, tossing sticks into the water and chasing one another with exuberance. Their laughter is timeless, a reminder that life continues amidst commerce and ritual, that human joy persists even in places shaped by ambition and trade. As the sun begins its slow descent, the ship is prepared for departure.
Cargo is secured, sails inspected, and the crew settles into their evening routine. The gentle hum of activity mixes with the soft lapping of the waves, creating a soothing, hypnotic rhythm. Lanterns flicker across the deck, casting warm pools of light that shift with the motion of the ship. Historians still argue how Phoenician influence spread so effectively, whether through sheer naval skill, trade networks, or cultural exchange. But as you watch the crew move with quiet precision, it seems evident that it was a combination of all three. Ships, ports, markets, and human ingenuity weave together into a system that thrives on both discipline and adaptability. As darkness falls, the stars appear above, mirrored in the gently rippling water. The sailors point out constellations that guide their journey: Orion, the Pleiades, and the North Star, symbols of continuity and direction. You lie back against the deck, inhaling the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and distant spices, letting the gentle sway of the ship lull you into contemplation. The journey continues, each port a testament to Phoenician ingenuity, patience, and maritime mastery. Carthage, with its bustling markets and commanding harbor, is another vital thread in the network, connecting the distant corners of the Mediterranean and reinforcing the quiet, persistent power of this seafaring people. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the sea, the song of the crew, and the memory of the ports carry you into a gentle, reflective calm. The first hints of light brush the horizon, soft pastels blending with the deep blues of the Mediterranean. You wake slowly, the gentle rocking of the ship beneath you lulling you into a state of relaxed awareness. The air is cool and carries the familiar tang of salt and cedar, a comforting reminder that the sea has been your companion for countless miles. Today, the ship charts a course toward the distant shores of the Balearic Islands, another link in the Phoenician network where trade, culture, and human endeavor converge. The crew is already at work, their movements quiet but precise. You watch as ropes are coiled, sails adjusted, and the rudder tilted just so to catch a subtle current. Each motion seems effortless, yet you know it represents years of experience, tradition, and meticulous observation. Every crew member is an extension of the vessel, each action a note in a symphony that has been performed countless times across the Mediterranean. Ahead, the silhouette of the islands emerges, rugged cliffs rising from turquoise waters, punctuated by sandy coves and scattered villages. The Balearics are smaller than the Phoenician home cities, yet they are vital nodes in trade networks. They provide safe harbor, sources of timber, wild game, and minerals, and a point of contact for sailors from across the Mediterranean. The islands appear peaceful from afar, but you know the docks will soon be alive with the rhythm of commerce, laughter, and negotiation. Stepping onto the dock, the smell of salt and sun-warmed stone fills your senses. Merchants are already setting up stalls. Baskets of dried figs, olives, and aromatic herbs. Jars of honey and wine, bundles of textiles in muted earth tones and vibrant hues. Children run along the quay, selling carved figurines, shells, and small trinkets, their laughter mingling with the shouts of traders negotiating prices. Every face, every movement seems infused with a quiet vitality, a testament to the enduring spirit of these communities. You wander through the town, taking in the details: narrow streets lined with whitewashed houses, shaded courtyards filled with the scent of jasmine and herbs, and small workshops where artisans demonstrate their crafts. A potter spins clay on a wheel, shaping it with fingers that move almost unconsciously, while a bronzesmith hammers delicate ornaments that glint in the sunlight. Nearby, a perfumer mixes fragrant oils, the aroma of frankincense and myrrh mingling with the sea breeze. Historians still argue whether Phoenician artisans developed these techniques independently or adapted them from local cultures, but the result is undeniably exquisite. A quirky tidbit catches your attention. Some locals believe that tossing a small shell into the harbor ensures fair winds on your next voyage.
Sailors smile knowingly, indulging the ritual with a wink. Superstition, practicality, and tradition mingle seamlessly in these ports, a reflection of the human need to find control, even in the unpredictable expanse of the sea. You make your way to a small elevated viewpoint overlooking the harbor. From here, the Balearics unfold in miniature. Ships bobbing gently in the water, merchants haggling over goods, and children weaving through the crowd with playful energy. You notice how the ships, though smaller than those in Tyre or Carthage, are meticulously crafted, their cedar hulls polished, and their triangular sails ready to catch the slightest breeze. Every vessel is a testament to Phoenician ingenuity, designed to endure storms, carry heavy cargo, and sail vast distances with minimal risk. Nearby, a scribe sits at a shaded table recording the arrival and departure of ships, the quantity of goods, and the names of merchants. The Phoenician alphabet allows him to work efficiently, translating complex transactions into simple, consistent marks. You watch his steady hand, understanding that these records form the backbone of a system that connects distant ports, maintains trust, and ensures continuity across generations. As the afternoon sun climbs, the harbor grows even busier. Merchants shout their prices, sailors adjust sails, and the gentle slap of water against the hull blends with the hum of activity to create a soothing, rhythmic backdrop. You stroll along the docks, noting how every small detail, the placement of crates, the timing of loading, the coordination between rowers and sailors, reflects centuries of refinement. The Balearic Islands served as strategic waypoints for Phoenician trade, linking the eastern Mediterranean with Spain, Sardinia, and beyond. Controlling these ports allowed for safer voyages, access to regional resources, and the expansion of cultural influence. Watching the activity, you understand why these seemingly remote islands were essential to sustaining Phoenician dominance across such a vast maritime network. By late afternoon, the crew prepares the ship for departure. Cargo is carefully secured, sails checked, and the vessel itself seems to sense the coming journey, creaking softly as if testing its own readiness. The captain moves along the deck, offering brief guidance, nods of approval, and quiet encouragement. There is a calm efficiency to these preparations, a ritual that combines practicality with respect for the unpredictable temperament of the sea. As the ship glides away from the harbor, the golden light of the setting sun bathes the islands, turning the cliffs and rooftops into a warm mosaic. The waves shimmer with reflected light, and below deck, sailors hum a familiar melody that drifts gently through the vessel. You lean back against the railing, inhaling the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and herbs, feeling the steady motion of the sea lull you into a reflective calm. The wind catches the sails and the ship moves with graceful precision, cutting through the water with ease. Lanterns begin to flicker on the deck, casting soft, moving shadows that add a sense of warmth to the approaching evening. Historians still debate how the Phoenicians managed to maintain such extensive trade networks across distant ports. But observing the crew, the ships, and the harbor systems, it's clear that a combination of maritime skill, diplomacy, and ingenuity made it possible. As night falls, the stars emerge overhead, mirrored in the gentle swell of the Mediterranean. Sailors point out familiar constellations, guiding the ship toward the next destination. You close your eyes, letting the lull of the waves, the rhythm of the vessel, and the distant laughter from the islands carry you into a state of calm, reflective peace. Each port visited, each mile sailed, reinforces the quiet mastery of the Phoenicians, the careful orchestration of trade, navigation, and human skill that built a civilization across the sea. The sun hangs low over the horizon, casting long, soft shadows across the deck as you wake to the familiar rhythm of the ship. The gentle sway beneath your feet feels like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring, and the air carries the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and a faint trace of herbs from the last port.
Today, the ship sails toward the distant shores of Iberia, one of the final western points in the Phoenician network. The crew moves quietly, efficiently, each action honed by countless days at sea. You watch them, noticing how even in routine there is grace, a choreography learned over generations. The sea stretches endlessly before you, a vast expanse of blue reflecting the waning light. The ship leans slightly into the wind, sails taut and shimmering, every rope and plank alive with purpose. You take a moment to appreciate the skill required to maintain such precision without modern instruments, relying only on observation, intuition, and the subtle clues of nature. The helmsman adjusts the rudder, the navigator squints at the horizon, and sailors shift with practiced timing, all contributing to the quiet symphony of movement that carries you forward. As the coastline comes into view, you notice the rugged cliffs, sandy inlets, and small settlements dotting the shore. Iberia, though distant and wild compared to familiar ports, offers resources, trade opportunities, and a foothold in the western Mediterranean. Phoenician vessels dock here to exchange goods, gather metals, and establish connections that ripple far beyond the immediate harbor. It is a place where commerce, culture, and the rhythms of human life intersect with the vast, ever-present sea. Stepping onto the shore, the smell of warm stone, earth, and sea fills your senses. The town is alive with movement. Merchants arranging amphorae of wine, olive oil, and resin. Artisans shaping clay, bronze, and wood into useful and decorative objects. And children weaving between the stalls, laughing and selling trinkets made from shells and reeds. The balance between industry and life here is delicate yet harmonious, each element contributing to the pulse of the port. A quirky detail draws your attention. Local sailors claim that a small stone placed under the mast of a newly built ship will protect it from storms, a superstition carried west from the Levant. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or merely a charming local belief, but you can see why it persists. The sea is unpredictable, and even small gestures of hope and caution are comforting. You follow the captain through the marketplace, noting the integration of cultures, Phoenician, Iberian, and Greek influences blending in the goods, languages, and practices of daily life. Traders haggle over copper ingots, textiles, and exotic spices. The scribes tally transactions with steady hands, using the Phoenician alphabet to record agreements across distances. You realize that these small, meticulous acts are what sustain the vast network of commerce, connecting Tyre, Byblos, Sidon, Rhodes, Carthage, and beyond. Nearby, a glass blower spins molten sand into delicate vessels that catch the fading sunlight, while a perfumer releases fragrant oils of myrrh, cedar, and herbs into the air. You pause, mesmerized by the transformation of raw materials into objects of beauty and function. Each vessel, each scented oil, each crafted amphora is a tangible piece of the Phoenician legacy, a legacy built on patience, skill, and the quiet mastery of craft and sea. As the afternoon wanes, the crew prepares for departure. Cargo is secured, sails inspected, and the ship seems to breathe with anticipation. The captain moves with calm authority, checking lines, offering guidance, and observing the wind and current. Every movement, every adjustment reflects the accumulated knowledge of countless voyages, an unbroken chain of experience stretching back to the earliest Phoenician mariners. The ship glides smoothly away from the shore, the golden light reflecting off the water and casting a serene glow over the deck. Lanterns flicker softly, illuminating the steady movements of the crew. Below deck, a sailor hums a familiar tune, a lullaby of the sea that drifts through the vessel, blending with a gentle slap of waves against the hull. You lean against the railing, inhaling the mingled scents of cedar, salt, and distant spices, feeling a profound sense of continuity with every sailor who has sailed these waters before you.
Phoenician ships, networks, and trade systems created connections across the Mediterranean, enabling the spread of goods, culture, and ideas. Ports like Iberia were more than mere stopping points. They were vital links in an intricate web that sustained both commerce and cultural influence. Standing here, you feel the quiet genius of a civilization built not on conquest, but on skill, patience, and connection. As twilight deepens, the stars begin to emerge, mirrored faintly in the gently rippling water. Sailors point out constellations, Orion, the Pleiades, the North Star, symbols guiding each voyage and connecting sailors across time and space. You close your eyes, letting the steady rocking of the ship, the soft hum of voices, and the whisper of the wind lull you into a meditative calm. The journey slows, as if the sea itself is easing you into rest. You reflect on the ports visited: Tyre, Byblos, Sidon, Arwad, Rhodes, Carthage, the Balearics, and now Iberia. Each city, each harbor, each market contributes to the quiet mastery of the Phoenicians, a civilization defined by their patience, ingenuity, and unending rhythm with the sea. Even the smallest gestures, the placing of a coin, the recording of a tally, the weaving of a sail, combine to create a legacy that stretches across generations. A soft wind brushes your face, carrying the scent of cedar, salt, and the faint sweetness of distant islands. You notice the gentle swaying of the ship, the soft creak of wood, the murmur of the crew settling for the night. Slowly, your mind begins to mirror the motion of the sea, steady, rhythmic, and infinitely calm. It is time to let the world fade gently from your senses. Close your eyes, feel the gentle rocking of the vessel beneath you, and breathe in the mingled scents of sea and cedar. The journey of the Phoenicians continues across the waters, a quiet, persistent testament to human ingenuity, patience, and connection. And in this moment, as night falls and stars wheel overhead, you are part of it all, drifting in the timeless rhythm of the Mediterranean, soothed by the whisper of history. The sun dips fully below the horizon, and the sea glows with the last light of day. Lanterns flicker softly on the deck, and the crew settles into the calm of evening. You feel yourself sinking into rest, the motion of the waves and the lull of voices carrying you toward sleep. Everything slows, the motion of the ship, the pace of life, the flow of history itself, until only the gentle rhythm of the sea remains. Let your breathing slow, matching the gentle sway of the ship. Each inhale draws in the mingled scents of salt, cedar, and distant herbs, grounding you in the calm of the Mediterranean night. Feel the soft motion of the waves beneath you, rocking you with the patience of centuries, each crest and trough a reminder of continuity and rhythm. The ports, the markets, the ships, and the people fade gently into memory, leaving only a serene understanding of connection, skill, and quiet mastery. You are safe here, surrounded by the whisper of history and the hum of the crew. The sea stretches endlessly, a mirror for the stars above, and the soft scent of resin and wood lingers like a lullaby. Allow your thoughts to drift, each one unspooling softly like a rope coiled on deck, releasing tension, releasing time, releasing yourself into the gentle motion of rest. The wind carries the faint murmur of distant ports, Tyre, Byblos, Rhodes, Carthage, and you can imagine the lives that pulse quietly within them, linked by waves, trade, and the patient rhythm of Phoenician mastery. Let this connection soothe you, reminding you of the vast web of human endeavor, and how even the smallest gestures of craft, of trade, of care create continuity across generations. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let yourself drift completely. The waves, the wind, the stars, and the whisper of history will carry you.
Your journey merges with theirs, part of the calm, enduring pulse of the Mediterranean, until sleep enfolds you gently, completely, peacefully. End of script. Sweet dreams.